In this video, we'll be taking a look at 3 college basketball games happening on January 11, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 6 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 3 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Illinois versus Iowa. Carver Hawkeye at 11 in the morning feels like someone scheduled a rivalry game during brunch and hoped everyone would act normal about it. You have a packed arena, the whole place in gold, and 2 top 20 teams sitting at identical 12-3 records staring each other down like neighbors arguing over who owns the driveway. The market is basically saying, fine, Iowa at home, you can have a couple of points, and a lot of casual bettors just nod along because Carver has that aura, that memory of past Iowa teams racing up and down the floor and burying threes. Here is the thing, that old picture of Iowa still lives in people's heads, but the math and the matchup lean the other way. Illinois walks in with one of the most lopsided scoring margins in the country, winning by nearly 20 a night while still playing real teams, not just a bye-game parade. They lean on length, depth, and a front line that looks like it belongs in a different weight class. And that is not just a tall team cliche, it is literally measured as the tallest roster in the nation on the analytics sites everyone trusts. That kind of size changes the geometry of the floor because every Iowa cut, every drive, every little floater suddenly has to arc just a bit higher, and over 40 minutes that is exhausting. Illinois is not just big, they are efficient in all the little grown-up ways that win close games on the road. They live near 80% at the stripe, they hammer the glass on both ends, and they have a top-tier offense that can score from pretty much everywhere without needing some heat-check game from deep. So instead of needing the whistle to help them, they tend to benefit from the whistle because when you get into that second half grind, it is the team that can turn a bump into 2 free throws that quietly eats into a home favorite's margin. Iowa, on the other side, has that shiny defensive profile on paper, holding opponents to low 60s and sitting near the top of the national charts in efficiency. But you could see against Minnesota how fragile that comfort can be once a game turns into a real fight. They built a big lead, saw it chopped down, and when it got tight late, they settled for jumpers and watched 3 clean looks at the tying 3 all spin out at the buzzer. That is not a they are bad thing, that is a this is still a new staff and a first-year head coach trying to teach a group how to close against good teams every single time thing. Now, right after that emotional road loss, they do not get a bye game to reset. They get a veteran, confident Illinois group that has already proved it can handle neutral floors and hostile gyms and would honestly love nothing more than to spoil a gold-out party. And while the books and the public still reflexively tilt toward the home side here, the pattern in this particular rivalry has not been so friendly to Iowa lately. Illinois has been the side that keeps its composure, wins the physical battles, and walks out with both the scoreboard and the spread in its favor. We just watched them hang 106 on this same program in the conference tournament last March, part of a stretch where Illinois has stacked win after win in this series and looked like the grown-up team while Iowa kept trying to play from behind. When a matchup keeps telling you the same story over and over, and nothing fundamental about the rosters or styles has flipped, it is hard not to lean toward the group that has already shown it knows how to manage this specific stage. So while the number is whispering, trust the home floor, the underlying profile for Illinois says something closer to, we can handle the noise, keep this inside a single possession game, and maybe steal it outright if closing time looks like it usually does when these two see each other. As our first pick for this matchup, the Illinois Fighting Illini to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Now, let us talk about the total because this one has a bit of a personality crisis baked into it. On one hand, everyone remembers that 106-94 track meet in the conference tournament, the kind of game where you blink and there are already 50 points on the board. On the other hand, the current versions of these teams are quietly living very different lives. The odds makers have parked this total in the mid-140s, a number that respects both scoring talent and defensive pride, and basically asks, are we getting the highlight reel shootout or the Big Ten rock fight that looks ugly but wins brackets in March? Iowa's defensive resume this season is not just coach speak. They sit in that tiny group of teams allowing around 60 points a night, and what makes it interesting is they are doing it without playing at a crawl. They still run their stuff, they still push when they can, but there is a lot more discipline in how they guard the arc and funnel drives into help. You could see it even in that Minnesota loss. Strangely enough, Iowa was awful for stretches, then stormed back, and the game still finished in the high 60s. 3 chances at a tying 3 in the final seconds, loud crowd, chaos, and the total still never sniffed a true shootout number. Illinois, for all the fireworks on offense, brings real defensive teeth as well. The advanced numbers love them on that end, sitting in the national top 20 by efficiency, which is not the kind of thing you get by accident in this league. They use that massive length to smother the paint, they contest threes without constantly fouling, and when they get into a rhythm, they can make opponents look stuck in mud for long stretches. That blowout of Rutgers was not just about hot shooting, it was about making Rutgers feel like every possession had to be perfect just to get a clean look. And when a defense like that walks into an arena where the home team already feels a little pressure to bounce back from a tough loss, you can see how possessions start to slow naturally. There is also the subtle factor of how both coaches will probably script this one, especially early. A noon local tip on national television in a ranked-on-ranked game tends to bring a bit of tightness in the opening 10 minutes. Everybody wants the statement start. Nobody wants to be down 15-2 on FOX, so you see a lot more deliberate sets, a lot more get the ball inside, get to the line, settle us down. That kind of tempo choice matters. If the first half is played like that, you are asking the second half to basically go full fireworks just to push this into a true high-scoring zone. The recent trend lines lean in the same direction. Illinois has spent a big chunk of its season cashing unders, not because they cannot score, but because their defense and free throw control let them dictate game scripts once they get ahead. Iowa, despite the home blowout scattered through the schedule, has found its totals creeping lower as the new identity settles in, especially when they bump into opponents that can match their physicality and do not panic when the building gets loud. Add in the rivalry feel, the familiarity, and the fact that both staffs now have plenty of fresh film on each other from that wild March meeting, and you have a recipe for a game where every possession feels important, which usually drags totals toward the conservative side. Could it turn into another 100-point circus if whistles pile up and both teams hit a heater from deep? Of course, they have already shown they are capable of that script. But given how this particular season has unfolded, the more likely version looks like a tense, possession-by-possession battle where both teams grind for quality looks, live at the stripe, and keep the scoreboard from truly exploding. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. UCF versus Cincinnati. UCF walks into this one feeling pretty good about life, sitting at 12-2 with that shiny number 25 next to their name in the latest AP poll. And they did that while still taking a punch last week from Oklahoma State and getting right back off the mat. They are treating this season like their formal Big 12 housewarming party, and home games in Orlando have started to feel less like conference play and more like a block party where the DJ refuses to turn the music down. This is not the slow, grindy UCF team some people still remember from the old American days. This group is perfectly happy to run, shoot early in the clock, and then trust that their depth and length will eventually wear you out. And when you glance at what they have actually done, not just the vibes, you see an offense piling up almost 87 points a night while still winning by double digits on average, which tells you they are not just racing, they are winning the drag race more often than not. The rhythm of their home floor tells the same story in a much louder voice. You get that opening night escape against Hofstra, 82-78, where they figured things out on the fly, then that Quinnipiac game where they casually hung 102 in a comeback win, and the Florida Gulf Coast matchup, where they hit a school record 19 threes and cracked another 100 in a 22-point blowout. Even the Vanderbilt loss at home, 105-93, fits the pattern because it showed you the floor and the ceiling at the same time. UCF can get punched in the mouth by a high major offense, look completely out of it, and still find a way to claw back into shouting distance once the pace and their riding wave of guards kick in. That kind of scoreboard profile matters when you start thinking about spreads because it tells you UCF rarely sleepwalks at home. If they win, it tends to be with enough separation that the final score looks like it belongs in a different weight class. Now look at who is walking into that building. Cincinnati's record, 8-7 overall and winless so far in Big 12 play, looks pretty ordinary at first glance, but the personality behind it is anything but ordinary. They are one of those teams that drags you into a test you are not quite prepared for. They have built a tough, physical identity around a defense that gives up only about 65 points per game, which puts them in that nationally elite neighborhood, the kind of group that makes every catch a chore and every trip to the rim feel like traffic on a bad day. Baba Miller and Mustafa Thiem form a front court that looks like it was designed in a lab for rim protection and rebounding, and when those two are in sync, driving the lane on Cincinnati feels like trying to get a layup over a forest. The problem, and this is where the spread conversation quietly tilts, is that the Bearcats have not really solved the offensive side of the puzzle against top competition, especially away from home. They have a few blowout wins sprinkled in against Western Carolina, NJIT, Alabama State, and Lipscomb, where the shots fell, the ball popped, and everybody left feeling great about the box score. But every time the lights have brightened against stronger programs, the same theme keeps popping up: long dry spells, stretches where they lean almost completely on their defense to keep things respectable, and late-game possessions that look more like someone please make a play than a clean, confident offense. The context around their lineup nudges things further. Jalen Haynes is still dealing with the aftermath of late October knee surgery, officially out indefinitely, and while there has been chatter about his return, he has not actually been a consistent part of this season on the floor yet, which means that front court depth on the road is not as robust as it looked on paper in the summer. At the same time, Jizzle James has only recently been folded back into the rotation after that strange mid-year dismissal and reinstatement saga. So even though he raises their ceiling as a lead guard, the chemistry still feels like a work in progress rather than a fully polished engine. When you package all of that and ship it into this particular building against a confident, fast-playing home favorite that already knows how to push games out of reach, you can see how the matchup leans toward the side that is already comfortable living in chaos and scoring in waves rather than the side that needs things tidy to feel in control. If oddsmakers hang a short number with UCF as the favorite, something in that classic single-digit window where you are basically just asking whether the Knights can turn a home win into a clear home win, the matchup profile, the home environment, and the way these two teams currently score and stall make one side stand out as the more reliable spread partner for this specific night in Orlando. As our first pick for this matchup, the UCF Knights to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. If you have watched even a few minutes of this UCF team so far this season, you know their games rarely creep quietly into the 60s. They tend to burst into the 80s and sometimes the 90s before anyone has time to tweet about pace of play. They are averaging almost 87 points per game, which already screams track meet, and their defense is allowing around 76, which politely whispers that they are not exactly strangling opponents into submission on the other end. That combination, a high-output offense with a defense that is good enough to survive but not designed to suffocate, is exactly the recipe that keeps totals creeping upward, especially in their own building where they have full control of rhythm. Look at the home sample. We talked about Hofstra pushing them into an 82-78 opener, Quinnipiac hand-delivering a first-half scare before UCF blitzed them late to hit 102 again, and then Florida Gulf Coast, where UCF rained those 19 three-pointers and casually dropped 102 in a game that looked more like a modern NBA scrimmage than a mid-season college contest. Even the loss to Vanderbilt, 105-93, fits right into this same soundtrack because it shows what happens when UCF's pace and let us trade punches mentality meets another team that is more than happy to fire right back. The game just keeps climbing and nobody remembers what a shot clock violation looks like. Nothing about their home schedule screams this will be the night everything slows down and both teams suddenly become allergic to scoring, and that matters when you are thinking about a number set in the mid-range instead of some absurd, inflated total that is trying to scare you away. Cincinnati, for their part, absolutely has the defensive chops to make people nervous about an over, and that is part of the fun here. They have already put together a portfolio of results that underline how good they can be at squeezing the life out of games, holding Western Carolina to 63, feeding NJIT only 67, and completely smothering Alabama State and Lipscomb in two wire-to-wire blowouts that never really felt in doubt. Their overall points allowed number in the mid-60s is not a marketing slogan, it is who they are, and when that defense connects with Baba Miller vacuuming up rebounds and Mustafa Thiem erasing drives at the rim, they can absolutely tilt a game back towards something that feels more controlled. But here's the thing, even Cincinnati's schedule shows us something sneaky about their scoring environment. Those comfortable defensive wins we just mentioned did not exactly finish 38-32. They rolled past 90 themselves multiple times. They hit 88 on Alabama State, 89 on Lipscomb, and 94 on Western Carolina and NCAA, which quietly tells you that when the lid comes off against overmatched opponents, they are happy to run the score up too. So while their defensive calling card is very real, this is not a pure rock fight team. It is more like a group that prefers to control the temperature but will absolutely let the oven heat up if the matchup or rhythm pulls them that way. Now drop that defense into this UCF context. In this specific moment of the season, UCF has already shown that if you try to run them off the three-point line, they will happily pound the paint and crash the glass. And if you sit back and protect the rim, they have enough shooting to make you pay, which is how you end up with both the 102-91 and 102-80 scorelines on the same schedule. Cincinnati's rim protection is a legitimate obstacle, but it also introduces something interesting for a total. Lots of blocked shots and altered attempts tend to create scramble situations, long rebounds, and extra possessions, and those broken plays are often where a game slips from manageable to wow. How did they get to 150 points so fast? On the other side, the Bearcats are not walking into a defensive buzzsaw. UCF is giving up around 76 points a night, and their style does not really encourage slow, patient half-court walk-ups from opponents, especially once fatigue from chasing their guards around sets in. Give Cincinnati that many trips, with a front court as talented as Miller and Thiam and guards who can push in transition when they get a clean rebound. And the Bearcats do not need to become a brand new offensive team to do their part. They just need to be themselves in an environment that is naturally tilted toward extra possessions and extra chances. So when you step back and think about what version of this game we are most likely to see, it looks a lot less like a half-court staring contest and a lot more like one of those Big 12 games where both sides have their runs, both coaches burn a few annoyed timeouts, and you glance up late in the second half and realize everybody has been living in the 70s for a while with plenty of time still on the clock. If bookmakers hang a reasonable mid-range number on this total rather than something extreme that dares you to take the under, the way UCF plays at home, the way Cincinnati's defense actually coexists with their own scoring and big wins, and the simple math of possessions versus efficiency all lean in one direction for this matchup's overall points. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Ohio State versus Washington. If you look at this matchup on paper, it feels like the kind of game where casual fans see Washington at home with that shiny record in Seattle and think, yeah, small favorite, that sounds about right. The building will be loud, the purple and gold crowd will be rowdy, and Washington being listed as a slight home favorite fits the story that odds makers are selling, with spreads sitting around Washington -2 to -2.5 at most books right now. But when you peel back the layers a little, it starts to feel more like the number is grading vibes and venue, not the full basketball reality of who these teams have been across 15 games each. Ohio State comes in sitting at 11-4, Washington at 9-6, and the Buckeyes have actually been the more consistent group over a larger sample, even while spending more time away from home and grinding through a tougher schedule footprint. Here is the thing that really swings this for the road side. Ohio State's identity this season has been about stability. They score in the low 80s on average while holding opponents in the low 70s, so they are not just getting into random shootouts and hoping to outgun people. They are stacking pretty clear scoring margins most nights. You see it in their numbers, but you also see it in their game logs, where wins over teams like Northwestern and West Virginia look similar in shape. Solid first halves, then enough answers late when the other team makes a push. That kind of profile usually travels well. It is the college basketball version of a car built for long highway drives, not just short trips across town. Washington, on the other hand, has been a little more volatile. They have that 9-6 record and a very real home edge, and they absolutely lean into the emotional swings of that arena. When the Huskies get rolling, the place feels like the floor is tilting downhill toward Ohio State's basket. But there is a flip side. Their scoring margin is narrower. They give up a few more points per night than Ohio State, and they lean heavily on a core of guys who are being asked to shoulder a lot, especially with all the bumps and bruises they have taken already this season. That kind of thin margin is not ideal when you are supposed to win by multiple possessions against a team that is more efficient and deeper when everyone is available. Travel is always lurking in the background of these non-conference style Big Ten cross-country games too. You have an Ohio State team flying into Seattle, dealing with the time change, different pre-game rhythm, and a hostile building. But they are not walking into this as an untested road group. The Buckeyes already have multiple road or neutral wins this year and have shown they can keep their offensive structure intact away from Columbus, which is a big part of why their predictive profile sits higher than Washington's on a lot of advanced sites. When a team is comfortable running its stuff in strange gyms, getting a small cushion on the spread can quietly become a big deal. Stylistically, this is also a pretty favorable matchup for the visitors. Ohio State's offense is built around a very steady lead guard in Bruce Thornton, a dynamic secondary creator in John Mobley Jr., and a front line that can punish mismatches without completely sacrificing spacing. They value the ball, they do not foul a ton, and they have multiple guys who can initiate sets, which is key when Washington starts switching or throwing different looks at the ball. On the other side, Washington is more dependent on winning with size, physical drives, and offensive rebounding, with Hannes Steinbach, Desmond Claude, and Frank Kepning all important in that effort. If there is any team in the Big Ten that is relatively comfortable getting hit on the glass and still winning, it is one like Ohio State that has multiple playable bigs and wings who rebound above their size. The injury context quietly leans toward making the Huskies' life harder in a game like this. Washington has been juggling injuries all season, and they are already dealing with the loss of Mady Traore for the year and Jacob Ognacevic missing extended time in the front court. The huge one, though, is Wesley Yates III. He led them in minutes, was one of their top scorers, and is now out indefinitely after wrist surgery, which leaves Washington more reliant on Zoom Diallo and Desmond Claude to carry the perimeter scoring and playmaking load. That is a lot of weight on a couple of guards against a Buckeye team that can throw waves of capable defenders at them on the ball and at the point of attack. Ohio State is not totally healthy either, so this is not some perfect roster against a broken one. Brandon Knoll, who had become a really important bench piece and small ball big, is out for an extended stretch with a foot injury, and transfer big Josh Ojianwuna still has not been cleared to contribute after last season's knee issue. That means Jake Diebler is leaning heavily on a 6 to 7-man core featuring Thornton, Mobley, Amre Bynum, Devin Royal, Christoph Tilley, and a sprinkling of bench minutes from players like Colin White and Gabe Cups. But here is the key difference compared to Washington's situation. Ohio State's heaviest usage group is largely intact, and the way they play, with a clear pecking order and strong late-game decision-making, is exactly what you want if you are catching a short number in a game that could easily come down to the final 2 or 3 possessions. Put it all together, and you get a small home favorite with a noisy building, but facing a visiting team that has the better overall efficiency profile, the steadier offense, and a closing 5 that has already proven it can survive tight finishes versus quality opponents. That is usually the recipe where the short road underdog has real value, because you are not asking them to be perfect, you are just asking them to play to the form they have already shown over 15 games. As our first pick for this matchup, the Ohio State Buckeyes to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Now let's talk about the total, because this number in the low 150s is where the market is daring you to trust all the shiny scoring averages without really respecting how this game is likely to feel possession by possession. Most books are hanging a total right around 152.5, which looks logical at first glance if you only glance at the season-long scoring columns, but starts to feel inflated once you think about how these two actually match up in January tempo and shot profile terms. On paper, both teams are over-friendly in the box scores. Ohio State checks in around 83 to 84 points per game, Washington around 81 to 82, and the raw combined average screams points. But raw averages do not tell you whether those points came from soft non-conference defenses, crazy shooting nights, or double overtime chaos. What matters here is how they are likely to score against each other. The Buckeyes' offense is at its best when it can attack early in the clock and then flow into structured actions, and Washington's is at its best when it can use size to batter you at the rim and collect second-chance points. In a game where both teams know how dangerous the other can be in space, the natural counter is to slow down the easy stuff. That usually trims a few possessions off the top. There is also the classic January legs factor. Washington is coming off a very physical run that has included Purdue, Indiana, and other heavy hitters, with their own writers openly talking about the strain of playing shorthanded. Ohio State, for its part, has been putting a huge workload on its starters since Noel went down, already ranking very low nationally in bench minutes even before the injury. When you compress rotations like that, you often get strong defense early and then some tired legs on jumpers late, which is a nice combination for unders in games where the total is built around the assumption of both teams humming offensively for 40 minutes. Stylistically, neither of these teams is truly a run-and-gun outfit. Washington does like to push in spurts, especially at home when the crowd is feeding them. But their recent shooting slump from three has been a real storyline, with their staff literally talking about how they are getting great looks and still not cashing them at a high clip. That usually leads to two things. First, a subtle shift toward more drives and post touches, which produce fewer quick three-point barrages. Second, slightly more conservative shot selection when games tighten. On the Buckeyes' side, their defense has quietly strung together several solid performances, and their recent trend has seen totals tick down, with multiple games landing in the 70s and low 80s combined rather than the high-octane style their early numbers might suggest. Then you layer in the officiating environment. Big Ten games, even in a West Coast gym, tend to turn into half-court grinders at key moments. Both of these coaches know that a wild, up-and-down game probably favors the side that hits the more ridiculous shots rather than the side that is better structured. So you are likely to see timeouts after big runs, extra emphasis on transition defense in both scouting reports, and plenty of possessions where one team runs deep into the clock looking for a high-percentage look inside. None of that means this becomes a rock fight, but it does shave possessions and nudges the game toward something in the mid-70s to low 70s range for each side rather than the 90s. In other words, it is very easy for this to be exciting, fast at times, and still sneak in a handful of points under a total in the low 150s. So while the scoreboard could absolutely see a few quick bursts, the combination of slightly tired rotations, Washington's injury-shaped shot profile, Ohio State's improving defense, and the natural tension of a meaningful January non-league style showcase all lean toward a game that is more controlled than chaotic. You can almost picture a final score that feels entertaining but still modest, like a 74-71 type finish, which looks fun on television but sits neatly under what the books are asking you to pay for. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.